Hi everyone, my name is Giovanna Proença and today we're gonna talk about finance, problem set 9 of CS50. So we're gonna see how to solve this problem, alright? And we're gonna also implement and see this working, okay? So if you wanna get more solutions and more videos about programming, so check the description below, alright? So basically here we have to build a website, as we can see in here in the screen. And it's going to be where we can buy shares of some places, we can sell, and we have to log in, log out, register. So here we kind of going to use everything we've learned in CS50 so far, all right? So this project is really complete. So the first thing you have to do is I recommend you to read the requirement, all right? And download the distribution code and then follow these steps of configuring, all right? Because to access the values of the shares and the symbols, we have to do an API call, and here they kind of explain you how to do this, all right? So you're basically gonna register in another website, get a key, and then we have to run this export API key. So as you can see, if I run here, this is my API key. If I run here, now I am able to work with the project, all right? So let's see right now, what do we have? If we do Flask run, we can open up here the link and see what we have so far in the project, okay? So proceed here. So right now we have the login page. So if I put here, I don't know, G and my password, I'm not going to be able to log in. And why is that? Because I didn't create the register route and other routes as well, all right? And then once we log in, we already have the logout route as well, okay? This cat that is appearing here will be kind of the, let me put here, this cat will be an image that we're gonna do for every purpose, all right? Every time the user does something that is not correct, we're gonna render this apology part here, but you're gonna understand during the code, all right? Right now we have to do the register route. As you can see, it's saying to do. And if we open up here the code, we have a lot of lines of code created already, okay? We have here the configuration for using session, to use the database and all other things. And we already have the routes that we're gonna use, okay? Right now, all of this is rendering an apology to do, so we have to do these routes. Like I said, the only route that is made for us is the login and the logout, okay? So let's start with the register. If we take a look here, the requirement, we have here, I suggest you to read everything, it's a lot of things, but the most important part is here, the specification. So we're gonna do register, quote, by, index, cell, and history, all right? And then you can add a personal touch and then you're done with the project, okay? So let's start working with register. So basically we have to complete the implementation of register in such a way that it allows a user to register for an account via a form, all right? So let's do step by step in here. So require that a user input a username implemented as a text field whose name is username. And we're gonna render an apology if the user's input is blank or username already exists, all right? More than just the username, we need an input field for password and confirm password, all right? Because when we're registering, we have to check if the registration is correct. So to do this, we're gonna, like we can see here, odds are you will want to create a new template, register.html, that is quite similar to login.html. So we're gonna start in this point, okay? If we take a look here at login.html, we already have here, let me zoom out. We already have here our code, all right? Where we can have the form, so we are extending the layout.html. This is good, so this means we have a file that already have the style for us, all right? So we just extend this HTML. We have the title where we're gonna change, and the focus of the HTML will be the block main, all right? So here right now we have the form with the action login, so this means that we're sending the data for login route, and the method is post. So this means we are submitting data to our backend, all right? Then we have two inputs, one input for the username, another for the password, and then a submit button. So since the CS50 already told us to reuse this file, we're gonna reuse this file for the register, all right? So here under templates, we're gonna do a new file, and I'm gonna call it register.html. So we know that now we're gonna work with this file, all right? So in register.html, I'm gonna paste everything we have, all right? All the code we got. And I'm gonna do some changes. So here it's not gonna be login, so this title is the title of the tab, all right? So for example, here in login, it appears login here. For our case now, it will be register, all right? So here, register. Then we have to do some changes in the form. So we're gonna send the data to the register route, all right? And right now we have the username, we have the password, we have to add one more input for the confirm password. So we can copy this one, there is no problem, all right? Because this is already made by CS50, and we can change here for the name that they asked us to use. So here it's saying name is confirmation. So let's change here the name for confirmation, all right? So here, confirmation. And in the placeholder, I'm gonna put confirm password, just because I want to make the user understands what this page means, all right, this input means. And here in the button, we can change to register. All right, so if we, right now we're not able to see anything, but now we have to do the step of rendering the HTML file in our application. So let's see how we're gonna do this. Let's open up app.py where we were before, and like I said, we already have a route where we can manipulate the things that are going to be displayed in the page, all right? So basically here we have two methods, the get and post. So like I said, the post method is when we are manipulating the data, and the get method is to display the things in the string. So for example, what we're seeing right now, it's the get method, all right? The post is every time you're clicking in the submit button, or for example, when you're logging in on Facebook or Instagram, when you click login, you're doing a post method, sending your credentials to the backend, all right? So right now we're gonna do this, okay? So let me remove this line, we don't need this anymore. So let's work first with the get method to see if our HTML is working fine, all right? So we're gonna do if request dot method, it's equals get, and here we have to use capital get, because this is how Python understands, all right? And then, so if we are using the get method, we're gonna return render template, and we're just gonna render the register.html, all right? Register.html. And if we save in here and try it out, if I click register, let's see if it's already understanding. No, I have to run the terminal again. So let's start the terminal again. I'm gonna close here, clear, Flask run. So every time we change the app.py, we have to refresh our terminal. If I open up here again, open, let's see. So if I click register, now we have here the tab register. We have now an HTML file that is being rendered for us. So we have the input, password, confirm password, and here we have the button register, all right? So for the get method, we are already done, okay? Now let's work with the post method. So for the post method, we're gonna do an else here, okay? Let me create this space for us. And the first thing we have to do every time we're working with the post method is getting the data from the form, all right? So how can we do this? To do this, we have to we're gonna use this, this property name, where we give a name for the data, all right? It's kind of, we give a tag, we give an identifier to know where we're storing the data. So for example, if I type in Giovanna, Giovanna will be stored in username, all right? The same for password and confirmation, all right? This is the property that we use. So let's do this first. Here I'm gonna use username, So username, the left part, it's a variable in Python, and the right part is the variable we're getting from the HTML, from what the user got. All right, so we're gonna do request.form.get, and inside the parentheses we have to use quotation mark and the name we're using in the register.html. So in here, if we take a look, it's username. All right, so here username, and we're gonna do the same for the other parts. So we're gonna do password equals to request.form.get, and here we're gonna do password, and we're gonna do the same for confirmation. All right, this is the name we're using, so request.form.get confirmation. Okay, so far so good. So right now we're getting the data from the form. Now we have to do some checking. So this is the parts that we have to handle here in the bullet point. So render an apology if the user's input is blank or the username already exists. This part of username already exists we're gonna do at the end, all right, because it's a little bit more complicated, but let's work with the if user input is blank. So how can we do this? We can do a checking here to check if the username, the variable username, is empty. So if we say if not username, what we're gonna do? We're gonna render the, we're gonna return the apology function, all right? And in here we have to pass a message. So in this case, must give username. I don't know. You can select something you wanna give, all right? A message you wanna give. And you might be wondering, what is apology, right? So apology is basically a function that CS50 already gave for us here in helpers.py, all right? We're importing app.py. And basically the goal is to render a message as an apology to user. So here, the input is a message, so the function will receive a message and it's going to return that image of the cat. So this is what we're gonna do here. We're gonna display the cat image with a message, all right? So now we are already checking the username and we have to do the same checking for password. So return an apology if either input is blank or the passwords do not match. So let's work first if they are blank. So we can do here, if not password, we're gonna do a return apology, all right, must give password. It's always good to put a good message in here so the user can understand what we're doing. And if not confirmation, because this is the name that we're using, all right, for the password confirmation, we're gonna return apology must give confirmation, all right? Now, how can we check if the passwords are the same? Because this is another requirement here for the passwords. How can we check if they match? So since they are text, all right, if you take a look here at the database, we know that the password, it's type text, okay? So we can work with them as a string, all right? So we can do if password, it's different than confirmation, we're gonna return apology, passwords do not match, something like this, all right? So we are returning error messages if they don't match, okay? So far so good. Now we're gonna start working with checking if the username already exists and converting these other bullet points. So let's see. So the first thing we have to do to register the user into our database, we have to think about this part here. So he's saying insert the new user into users, storing a hash of the user's password, not the password itself, okay? So hash the user's password with generate password hash. What is this? So basically, this is kind of an idea of making your password secure, all right? So instead of storing the password, I don't know if the password is 11, instead of storing 11, we're gonna store a huge encrypt password so no one can hack you. This is the idea, all right? So how can we do this? We have here in the top of our function, so we're importing this function from this library, and this function will convert our password into a hash password, all right? So here what we have to do, we're gonna create, after all these checkings, we're gonna create here a variable. I prefer to create variables, all right, where we're gonna call the function generate password hash, and we have to pass an argument in this function. That will be your own password, okay? So here you can choose password or confirmation because both of them are the same, but I'm choosing to use password in here. So the hash variable will store for us this hash password, okay? Now we're gonna try to register this new user into our users table. So if you take a look in the database, we have here in our users table, we have username, hash, and cash. And basically cash, we have already $10,000 as a default value, all right? And also ID, of course. So we're gonna insert the name and the hash. These are the only two columns we have to insert info, all right? So how we're gonna do this? We're gonna do the try, okay? So what we're gonna try? We're gonna do the insert into. So if we take a look here, insert into W3 schools. I really like this this resource because W3 schools has a really good documentation. All right, so I highly recommend that you take a look, not only for SQL, but also for HTML, CSS, JavaScript, Python. It's really good. You can understand because they put here a lot of examples, all right? So this is the structure. We're gonna use insert into, the name of the table. We put the columns where we want to insert the information, and then values, and we put the values. But this is a command for Python, or for SQL. Let's see how we're going to implement this in Python. So every time we're working with database in Python, we have to use DB, all right? And why DB? DB, it's where we're storing the database in our code. So it's here on line 26, all right? We're storing our database in this variable. So we're going to do db.execute. And here inside the db.execute, we're gonna write the SQL instruction, the SQL command, all right? So I'm gonna put in here as a comment what we just saw for the insert into command. So basically we're gonna do insert into, and what is the name of our table? If we take a look in here, the name of our table, it's users, all right? So insert into users. And now we open up parentheses and we put the name of the columns we want to insert. So here we're going to insert in username and hash, all right? So here we're going to do username and hash. Then we put space values. And in here, differently than what it's showing in here, we're going to use question mark, because the question mark is a placeholder for variables we want to insert from Python to our SQL, all right? So now let's use question mark in here, all right? And we have to use two question marks because they are placeholder for these two pieces of information we're going to insert into username and hash, all right? So after the, I put a comment in db.execute, this shouldn't be a comment, all right? So right after the quotation mark, we're gonna put comma, and then we're gonna put the name of the variables we are storing this information of username and hash. And in this case, it's the same name, right? Username and hash. So we're gonna store in here. We're gonna try this, and we can have an error. So if we try and everything works fine, this means that the username doesn't exist, all right? But if we have an except, this means that the username already exists. So if this occurs, we're gonna return an apology saying username already exists, all right? So return apology, username already exists, okay? So this is the first part. We are almost finished, okay? So let's see the last part. So once you've implemented register correctly, you should be able to register for an account and log in. And you should be able to see the rows, blah, blah, blah. So now we have to do the following. This is one part that you can add as a personal touch. Once we're able to register the new user, we can store the information of this new user using session and then redirect to the to enter in the website. So instead of going to the login route again, we can redirect to already entering the account. This is what actually happens in regular social medias. Every time we register to a social media, we don't go again to the login. We are already redirected inside of our account. So this is what we're gonna do. So first, to remember the user using session, we're gonna put here session. All right, and here, if you take a look, we're gonna use kind of the same structure that is in the login route. We're gonna do the following: session user ID, all right, session user ID, and we're gonna, so let me replace session user ID, and this will be equals to what we just got here in the insert into. So for the insert into, we're gonna create a variable, so new user equals to db.execute insert into what we just did, and we're gonna do session user ID, and we're gonna put here new user. All right, so this will remember us, and then we're gonna redirect to the first page. Let me get this. So we're gonna redirect to the main route, so we're gonna enter in our account. All right, so now let's test. Let's check if it's everything working fine. So Flask run, and hopefully we will be able to add our first registrant. So if I create here in register Geo, this is my nickname, I put here one password and I click register. Let's wait a second, we are being redirected inside the account. You see here we have a logout, we have already this to do because we have to do more for routes. Okay, if I log out and if I try to register without, for example, if I try to register with the same username that I already have, so it's going to give me an error, so it's going to give username already exists. All right, so this is the apology function working for us. And if I want to log in, now that my username is already stored in our table here, Geo, I have here my hash. You saw I just put 2 characters, and here now it's a huge hash password, and I start with $10,000. all right, so if I try to register Geo and my password, when I log in, now I am inside of the account. All right, so this is what we have to do for register. Let's see what we have to do for the next ones. So now let's do the quote route. Okay, so complete implementation of quote in such a way that it allows a user to look up a stock's current price. So here it's going to be basically the following. We're gonna have a stock HTML where we're gonna let the user input a stock symbol, and we're gonna add this stock. We're gonna put the property name symbol, all right, to get the data in our form, and then submit the user's input via post to quote. And other, like, you will want to create 2 new templates, quote.html and quoted. When the user views this quote via get, render one of those templates, inside of which should be an HTML form that submits to quote via post. In response to a post, quote can render that second template, embedding within it 1 or more values from lookup. So basically we're gonna have one HTML file where we're gonna let the user ask for the stock's current price, and once the user clicks submit, we're gonna render or an apology if the stock doesn't exist, or we're gonna show up the quoted.html where we're gonna display some properties about the stock. All right, so let's start implementing. The first thing we're gonna do will be here a new file, so we're gonna create the quote.html. okay, and in this quote I'm gonna reuse again what we did in register, because here it's going to be basically a form as well, so you can reuse what you have in register. Okay, and I'm gonna change here, so this I'm gonna put quote, and here in the action, if you take a look in app.py, we already have a quote route, so we're gonna work with this quote route. So we're gonna send the data to quote, And in here we just need one input, that is the symbol. All right, so I'm gonna remove the other inputs that we have. I will also add here an H1 just because I want, but it's not necessary, saying quote, just the heading of the page. All right, so the user can know which page he is. And here I'm gonna change the ID to, let me remove the ID. Actually, the ID is not necessary in this case. I'm going to change here the name for symbol. If I'm not mistaken, is symbol the one that we have to use in here. All right, then I'm gonna change the placeholder, so this will be symbol, so the user know that he has to add a symbol. And then I'm gonna put here quote, all right, because this is what we're doing. Okay, so this is the part of the HTML, just some changes. Now let's implement the important part, that is the app.py. So like it said in the requirements, we're gonna manipulate if and else condition with get and post. So, and we already have these methods here. So if request dot method equals get, we're gonna do the following. We're gonna return render template, and we're just gonna render the template quote.html. all right, then now let's work with the else. So else, let's get first the data from the form. So here I'm gonna put symbol, okay, and we're gonna do request.form.get symbol. Okay, so with this, now we have to take a look. We have to check if the user inputs something. All right, like the same thing as the username was empty. So we're gonna do if not symbol, we're gonna return apology. We're gonna return apology message. So must give symbol, for example. All right, we're doing some checking, so our web page know what to do when certain things happens that are not expected. Okay, then now we have to check if the symbol exists in our database, right, in the API key we are using, the API call. So to do this, we have here a function in helpers.py that it's called where is this, lookup. All right, so the lookup is going to try to connect the API key, the API doing an API call, so he's going to try to get the symbol in the website that we register. If this API call returns us none, this means that the symbol doesn't exist. Otherwise, it's going to return us the name, all right, price and symbol. So we have to get this information to display in the quoted.html. So the first thing we're gonna do, I'm gonna change here symbol, and to do this, we're gonna create here the stock, all right, and we're gonna call the lookup function. So we're gonna do lookup, and I'm gonna render here symbol. I'm gonna pass symbol as an argument, because if you take a look in here, he's expecting to receive something. All right, then, and one thing that is good, the symbol are normally sent as all uppercase. So we're gonna use here the upper function to make all uppercase, all right, so we don't have any bugs during the code. Then we have to check. So if stock is none, so we're gonna do this checking. If stock equals none, we're gonna return that this symbol doesn't exist. All right, so return apology. Symbol does not exist. All right. Otherwise, we're gonna send the data to our HTML file. So we're gonna return render template. All right, and we're gonna create our quoted HTML, quoted.html. We don't have this so far, but we are gonna pass 3 info. All right, so we're gonna pass here the name, price, and symbol, because this is what we're gonna receive as from the lookup function. So here we're gonna do name equals to stock, and since we're seeing here this is a dictionary, we're gonna use as dictionary. All right, so stock, and here name is price, if I'm not mistaken. So price here equals to stock price, and the last argument, the last parameter we're passing to our HTML will be the symbol. All right, and here will be stock symbol. Okay, so this way we're sending information from the backend to the front end here to our quoted.html. So let's create the quoted.html. We don't have this page so far, so we're gonna do quoted.html. Okay, and in here we're just gonna display the information about the stock. All right, so again, if you want, you can copy and do the changes. So I prefer doing this way. All right, so I'm copying here and I'm going to do the changes. So this will be quoted. All right, and here I'm gonna put quoted. In this case, we don't have a form anymore, so I'm gonna remove, and we can add some things in here. So I'm gonna use a h3 and we can put name. All right, and in name, since we want to display the name of the stock, we can display the name, we can display values from the variables we're sending here in the app.py. So this is the name we're sending, so this is the name we're gonna use in HTML, and this is the variable we have in Python. All right, so if we want to display name, we're gonna use the variable name, and to use variables we use double curly bracket. All right, so name, the next part I'm gonna use an h3 again, price. So if you want, price is the name of the variable we're sending, and we also have here a symbol. All right, so this we can display all the infos that we have from the backend. So here symbol. All right, so let's see if this is working. So if I do here Flask run, and let's open up here again. Let's see. So now we're logged in, it remembers us. Now let's see the quote route. So if I click quote, we're seeing here the HTML file we create. All right, the quote where we have the heading here, an input, and the button. So for example, if I want to know the quote of Netflix, so I think it's NFLX. If I do quote, it's going to return to me the information about this symbol. So Netflix, the price, and the symbol. All right, so this route is working. Let's see the next one. So now we're gonna work with the by route. As we can see here, we have a lot of things to do, but don't worry, we are capable of doing everything really well. Okay, so basically what is going to happen? We're gonna have a page where we can get the symbol and how many shares the user want to buy. All right, once the user click this button, we're gonna send the data to our database, and we're gonna change how much cash the user has, and also we're gonna update one new table. We're gonna create a new table that will be called transaction, where we're gonna store all the transactions of the user. So if the user buy a share or sell something, all right, so we're gonna keep track of this. So let's start from what we were doing before. So here, if we take a look, we have our by route. Okay, right now it's empty. Okay, but we're gonna do everything we need to do in here. Since the by route, the by.html will only have a form we can get again from the quote.html. All right, so let's create our file here, by.html. Okay, and in here we're gonna store the information about the file. So if we do control here, I'm gonna put by as the title. Here the action we're gonna change to by as well, because now we want to buy. The quote I'm gonna put by as well. Okay, now we have to do some changes. So we want to have an input with to be the symbol and another to be share. All right, so let's do this. And for shares, we have to do some changes, but let's do in a minute. So I'm gonna paste it here. Then here we're gonna call shares. All right, and the placeholder I'm gonna change to shares as well. And here, one part that is important is that this is not text anymore. This is number, all right? Because we're gonna receive a number from the user, okay? The bottom here, we can change the name for by, all right? And this is it for the HTML, okay? So let's start working with the backend. So what is gonna happen here? In here again, we have to work with the if and else condition if it's a get or post method. So if request dot method equals get, what we're gonna do in here, we're gonna return render template, and we're just gonna render the by.html. All right. Now let's work with the else. I'm gonna stop here my terminal, otherwise it's going to give us some bug. So let's do the else. What is the first thing we have to do every time we're working with data? We have to grab the data from our form, all right? So we have to grab symbol and shares. And in here, we're gonna do this. So symbol equals to request.form.get. And in here, we're gonna get symbol. All right, and we have the same for shares. Shares, it's equals to request.form.get, and here will be shares, okay? Now we need to do some checking. So if you take a look in here, render an apology if the input is blank or the symbol doesn't exist. So this part, if you remember, we already did this in our quote route, so we can get this from quote route. All right, so I'm gonna take this part because we already did for quote and we don't need to redo since we already understood how to do this. Okay, so I'm gonna paste in here, and now we have to handle the shares. Okay, so for shares, render an apology if the input is not a positive integer. So here we have to do a casting. All right, so why? How can we do this? Here it's going to, even if we use type number, we're gonna receive from the form, the shares will be in type text. So we have to do a casting here. It will be an integer, right? So here int, and we can do this checking. So if shares less than 0, so it's just asking if it's positive, right? Or not a positive integer. Let's use less than 0. I think this is the correct one. If this is less than 0, we're gonna return an apology saying share not allowed. All right, so this means that we are not doing the correct thing in here. Now, once the blah blah blah, we're gonna take a look at the stock's current price. So now, odds are you will want to select how much cash the user currently has. All right, so this means that now we have to do some changes in the database. So we're gonna work with the users table, and we have to create a transactions table. This transactions table we're gonna use in the future, but it's good that we do the setup right now. All right, so let's take a look how we're gonna do this. Basically, the transaction table is this. We're gonna have a user ID that will make a match with the ID of the user's table, all right? We're gonna have a symbol, we're gonna have the share, the price, and the date, so we can keep track of when the user bought or sold the share, all right? So let's create the database here in our SQL. So to create a new database, we have here create new table, and we're gonna call transactions. All right, and how many fields do we have? So if we take a look again at the image, we have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. So we have 6 fields in here. All right, so go. So the first one will be ID, right? So the type is an integer. It's a primary key and it's auto incremented. All right. The next one will be user underscore ID, and again it will be an integer and it's not a primary key. Then we're gonna have symbol So symbol is type text, all right. And it's not gonna be a primary key. We're gonna have shares, and shares in this case is an integer, all right, so int. Then we're gonna have price, and price in this case can be a float number, but since we don't have float, we're gonna save this as a real, all right. And to finish, we're gonna have date here, and we have the one type that it's timestamp, all right. So this is what we're gonna do. Then you can click here in create, and now we have our new table transactions, all right. Right now it's empty, but we're gonna start adding things in here, okay. So now let's think about this. So now, before we move on, we need to know if the user has enough money to buy the stock, all right. So render an apology without completing a purchase if the user cannot afford the number of shares at the current price. So how are we gonna do this? First, we have to calculate the value of the transaction. So we can create a variable transaction value. And how we're gonna calculate this? It's going to be the value of shares times the price of the stock, all right? So we're gonna do a casting here, and we're gonna get the stock. Let me see if we need the casting, because here as I can see in helpers.py, it's going to return us a float, so we don't need to do a casting in here. So here we're gonna use stock, because this is where we're storing the data of the stock, and we're gonna do times price, all right? This transaction value will give us a number, all right? And then we have to check if the user has enough money. So how we're gonna do this? We're gonna do user cash. First, let's do user ID to get the ID of the user. So to do this, we're gonna use session to get the user ID. So we're gonna see session, and here we're gonna use user underscore ID, all right? Now we're gonna take the value of cash, how much money the user has in the database, and we're gonna store in a variable, all right? So user cash db, and I'm gonna do db.execute, and in here inside we're gonna do the select cash from users. So we're selecting the column cash from users, and our condition is where the ID is equals to question mark. And why question mark? Because here we want to get the user ID, all right? You can use question mark or comma ID here, and yes, this way ID, and then you do ID equals to user ID, all right? You can use both question mark or this colon ID, okay? So let's see what we are getting from this line 74, all right? So we're gonna do return, oops, I'm on the wrong place. So return JSONify, this is really good to check, it's like a debugger to check if you're getting the right things. User cache db, all right? Now let's start our terminal. Oops, Flask run. If we go back in here to buy, let's suppose I want to buy NFL X1, and I click buy in here. So this is returning us the value, it's a list, all right, where every item will be a dictionary. In this case, it's only one item because we only have one user with the ID that we're using, for example, ID1 for Geo, our username. And this is returning us how much cash I have, all right? So to turn this into a real number, we have to do one change in here. So since this is a list and we want to get the value 10,000, we have to get the first element of the list, all right? So real cache, so user cache will be user cache underscore db, all right? So we're gonna get from the first element, and the first element is a dictionary. So since we just want to get 10,000, we have to use the key pair, all right, to get the value. So here we're gonna use cache. Okay, so now our user cache is a real number. Then we have to check if the user cache is greater than the transaction value. If it is, we are good to buy this stock. Otherwise, we don't have enough money, all right? So if user underscore cash is less than transaction value, we're gonna return an apology. So return apology, I don't know, not enough money. Okay, so this won't allow us to continue if we don't have enough money. Okay, now we can update the table. So the first thing we're gonna do, we're gonna update the user table because we have to subtract the value of the transaction with the value of the user cash. All right, so update cash will be user underscore cash minus transaction value. Okay, and now we're gonna do an update. So I don't know if you remember, but every time we want to update, we can use here. So update SQL W3 schools. Again, I highly recommend you to use W3 schools because it's really good. So here, how can we use the update? This is our command. I'm gonna put here as a comment, all right? So hash, let me put everything the same line. So we're gonna say update the name of the table, set, then we say what columns we want to set with which values and what is the condition, so what is the row we want to update. All right, so we can do db.execute here and we're gonna say update, the table's name is users, set. Here we just want to change the cash column, so cash equals to question mark again. All right, let me get here my question mark. Where is it? Here, my question mark. So user set cash to question mark. And what is our where? So where ID is equals to question mark again, because the ID will be the user ID we're saying, all right? Because in this case, we want to update the cash that the user will have after this buy that he's doing. All right, then we have to update also our transaction table. All right, so let's review what we have in our transaction table. So we have to update the following columns. We have to insert a new row in our transactions where we're gonna add the user ID, symbol, shares, price, and date. All right, so let's see how we're gonna do this. So we're gonna start first getting the data, the timestamp, right? So to do this, we're gonna use one library from. So in here in the top, we have to import date time. This is the name of the. I'm seeing my second monitor. So here, date time is the name of the library. All right, and how can we get the date? So basically, we're gonna do date. I don't know, and we're gonna do date time dot now. All right, so this way we're gonna get the exact time the user is buying the stock. All right, and now we can insert into a new line. So we already saw here how to insert into, right? So we're gonna do the following. Let me get here the insert into that we already have for another part, and then it's on register right here. So let's get these two lines to use as our example. So if we go in here, let's update now our table. So I'm gonna paste, okay? So how do we do insert into? In this case, we don't need a new user, all right? So we're gonna do insert into. In our case right now, the table is transactions, all right? And what are the columns? So like I said, the columns are this one, all right? So user underscore ID, symbol, shares, price, and date, all right? And what are the values? So since we're updating 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, we need 5 question marks in here, okay? So I'm gonna put 5 question marks in here. And now we have to update with the user ID, symbol, shares, price, and date. So for user ID, now I'm gonna remove this from here. So for user ID, we're gonna use what? We already have one variable where we're storing the user ID in here. So if we take a look, this is the line 74, user ID. So we're gonna change for user ID. Then we want the symbol. So here we can use stock symbol. Then we can use, so for shares, we're gonna use shares, all right? For price, we're gonna use stock